This is my journey.
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 This is my journey with jazz. Yeah! All right, hello there, little kitties. I'm actually going to call you little jazzsters today. Oh yeah, we're getting into the jazz today. We're going to talk about the swing era. Now the swing era was also known as the big band era. Oh yeah, swing era, big band era. And this thing took place somewhere around 1930 to like the mid 40s. Oh yeah, this was the most popular music in America at the time. It started out with, primarily in the black neighborhoods, with these black bands, because there was this guy who, as people migrated from Storyville when it closed, they ended up in Chicago as a part of the Great Migration. One of the musicians who ended up there was a guy named Fletcher Henderson. When he saw that the crowds were getting bigger and bigger and the bands had to get louder and louder, he started actually writing arrangements, because before this time, people just played by ear, whatever they heard. He started writing out parts, and over time, he standardized the instrumentation and arranging style for big bands that is used to this very day. That's Fletcher Henderson. Some of the big guys at this time would have been, Duke Ellington and Benny Moten. Oh, we cannot forget Benny Goodman, who in 1935 had a concert in LA at the Palomar Theater, and he was called the King of Swing. What is swing? Oh, it's dancing, baby. You still gotta dance. That's what this was all about. So please remember, 1930 to the mid 40s, it's about dancing. It's about after that great migration from Storyville to Chicago. Say Chicago. Oh yeah, Chicago, everybody's there, and as the demand for louder and louder increases, Fletcher Henderson starts writing out these arrangements and standardize the big band instrumentation and manner of arranging, and then you know what? It was all good, the most popular music in America for those 15, 20 years. And that's the beginning of the swing era.
Well, the swing era had a lot of up-and-coming players that were really kind of pushing the boundaries of the instruments. Obviously being a bass player myself, I'm really kind of attracted to people like Jimmy Blanton, Walter Page, who played with the Count Basie band and was kind of one of the pioneers of the walking bass lines. And of course Jimmy Blanton, who was really kind of the first bass soloist that took the instrument further away than anybody really had done it before, playing it like a horn player and really bringing it to the forefront. Slam Stewart, who played with the bow, and he actually sang with the bow an octave higher, so he gave it kind of like this effect. It's really cool effect, kind of like a zzz. But it was a very unique player that was very involved in the swing era, in smaller groups actually, but those are probably my three favorite ones.
It was such a huge era. It's hard to pick several, but the thing was that there was no TV much in this era, so these singers were superstars and very entertaining, and the beat was very solid, and it was a dance era. So when you think of people like Cab Calloway, that was so entertaining and jumping around and singing these songs that were so popular, he was very big. And then there's all the people that were singing all the pretty songs that people were dancing to. Billie Holiday, Peggy Lee, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, and they were called girl singers of these big bands and these big orchestras that they had of this era.
My favorite players from the swing era are Count Basie and Duke Ellington.
And my favorite players from the swing era has to be Tricky Sam and Al Gray.
The swing era, there was a lot of great players in the swing era. One of my favorite, as a trumpet player, one of my favorite trumpet players was the great Harry Sweets Edison. Sweets was fantastic. And just like everything in the swing era, he swung really hard, but I guess they gave him the nickname Sweets for a reason, because everything he played was just sweet and it just got right to you.
Earl Bostic, we're talking about Count Basie, we're talking about some of the early Ellington music comes out of that era. Harry Carney, the famous bass and bari sax player, well, multi-woodwindist, Harry Carney. Yeah, there's just so many guys from that era. I guess I could put together a Mount Rushmore, so to speak. But yeah, there's a lot of guys from that era.
So in the swing era, the bass really kind of had a more defined role, and it became the backbone of the rhythm section, playing quarter notes, playing the walking bass line. What we know today as the walking bass line was just quarter notes, doom, 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 doom. And it kind of imitated what the bass drum was doing in the drums, but then it put pitch to it. It changed the notes, so it was able to outline the harmony while playing melodically and also rhythmically. So the bass in this era, it did that, but it also, with players through Jimmy Blanton and Slam Stewart, it really took a more soloistic role. So it kind of was able to be featured like they would feature a sax player or a trumpet player. It really was able to be put in the forefront of the band as a soloistic instrument too. And Duke Ellington really took advantage of that by writing specifically to feature the bass.
Well, my instrument, the piano, was mostly used as with the rhythm section and keeping the rhythm going with the big bands before the smaller groups started coming about. But basically, it was keeping the rhythm going and for this real heavy dance scene that was happening all through that time. Then it went on to become more jazzy and more interpretative music, where the jazz kept going forward. But at that time in the swing era, they call it the rhythm section, the bass, piano, and drums.
The piano changed a lot during the swing era. You see, in the New Orleans phase of this music, the pianists either played by themselves, right? This big stride or ragtime piano, or in the case of Earl Hines, he was trying to mimic what Louis Armstrong did in his right hand, and there was either complete background or lots of interaction. There wasn't a lot in the middle. Now, in the swing era, it was bigger ensembles. Instead of having 5 people, the hot 5s or the hot 7s, now we're talking about 14, 16 instruments, saxes, trombones, trumpets, a full rhythm section, which is piano, guitar, bass, and drums. And there was not a lot of room for the pianist to be constantly playing all the time. The pianist had to pick their spots where they're going to play, and nobody was better at this than Count Basie. His style of playing the piano was completely based around the melody that was happening in the swing era, and those songs and those arrangements, and especially at the beginning of a song, setting up the mood, giving you the flavor of what's to come. Same with Duke Ellington. He did a lot of intros, setting the mood, figuring out, is this going to be happy? Is this going to be strange? What's going on? Is this about trains, like in Take the A Train? And then, and the endings. A lot, especially Count Basie played a lot of the endings. And he had this technique called drop 2, where we would take one of the notes on his right hand and he would drop it onto his left hand, and it gave it a really unique sound. And so he had these simple, playful chords that he would play in the middle of the song. Boo-doo, ba, boo-doo-doo, ba, doo-doo, boo-doo-doo, ba. And so that's what made Count Basie such an incredible band leader and such an incredible pianist. Just so he moved the music forward with the little bits of piano that he played in the whole recording.
Now the trombone shifted from New Orleans music by teaming up with other trombonists. Now, instead of playing by themselves, they had to play with 2, 3, sometimes even 4 other trombonists in a section. So this involved having to balance your playing with other people, and not just with the trombones, as I mentioned before, as the trumpets and the saxophones had to do as well.
In the swing era, the trumpets, well, in New Orleans, the trumpets basically were the melody line, but in the swing era, it changed a little bit. the trumpets became a lot more percussive and had a lot of punch to the music. Again, the music was made for dancing, so that was important to have that driving feeling. So the trumpets were actually, the trumpet section was used in that way a lot.
The saxophone kind of took over the vocalist role. They replaced the clarinets and became a very prominent figure in the big band. There wasn't any type of amplification at the time, and so Ben Webster, all these guys were known for their sound and their ability to project and compete with all these other instrumentals, drums, you got trumpets and trombones, and that's one of the things that you most remember about that time is the sound of these great saxophone players of the era. Like a lot of the equipment that we try to acquire today is made in the spirit of the old masters. That smoky tone and their sound and their expressiveness is something that I don't think we've been able to duplicate since.
My journey with jazz, yeah, baby.